So even before the pandemic, we know that food security is an issue in this city. So we know that over 66,000 children access the food bank every year, and 1 in 6 children in this city grow up in poverty. So a big issue anyway, and the pandemic really brought it into sharp focus. And we heard great stories of ordinary citizens doing extraordinary things to feed children and families in this city. And that was the inspiration for the Disrupt-ATHON. I think it can very quickly be described as a citizen-led competition where teams come together to develop concepts and solutions to solve some of the biggest social issues in our city.
In this whole COVID era, right, I think a lot more people are starting to become aware of the vulnerabilities in our supply chains for access to food and whatnot. And I think those things are starting to become realized, but will continue to be more and more realized as time progresses if things continue.
With COVID hitting, has brought to light that anyone is susceptible to food insecurity. And I think that's highlighted with the increasing numbers that have been seen by the food bank last year and into this year. We're still waiting on those numbers, but we're certain they're going to be higher.
Definitely a spirit of understanding, giving people the benefit of the doubt, like I think a lot of times people are having a hard time for a reason, right? Like they don't want to have a hard time. They don't want to suffer like they are, right? So I think that's a big thing, empathy, right? And then in addition to that, I think, and something we're doing is learning more about food, how we get our food, what we can do to grow food, like start a little garden in your backyard, learn how much work it takes. It's not easy, right? And I think a lot of people forget about how much work it takes to grow and produce food, especially in large volumes.
The actions that other community members and citizens of Calgary can take to help to champion the need to address food insecurity really, I think, comes from looking at your neighbors. I think that all too often we have kind of seen people who are at risk or vulnerable as their choices, when sometimes that isn't their circumstances. These are things that are sometimes out of their control. I also think that we need to be kind and compassionate to one another, to realize that we are all at a point of vulnerability at the moment. I live in a suburban area of Calgary, and I know that the neighbor, 2 doors down, may very well face food insecurity, but be in a position where they might not be able to express it, or for fear of that stigma that's around saying I need help. And I do think that a lot of the time there is limitations on that in our society. So I think that one of the big things that we can take away is to just be understanding that this is something that is a current problem and an emerging issue in our communities.